Hey, thanks for joining me here tonight, guys. Uh, Tonight we're going to be talking about deleting records. We'll be using the remove function, the remove if function. And just to let you know, we do have a playlist that we've been going by. We've been building a task list or to-do application. And I did just paste the link in the live chat. It will also be in the video description if you want to sort of go back and see any other videos that you've missed. And a task list application is actually a very popular application to build as you're learning a new development platform like PowerApps or a traditional uh, language like C Sharp, PHP, and many others out there. Okay, so here's the application here. I would like to go through all the use cases that we're going to implement deleting records here in this application within this video. Okay, so the first use case, let's say, okay, right here we're looking at a listing of records that we could edit. So I'm going to click on this first record here to go in and edit. Okay, now I'm going to make the screen bigger, myself smaller. Okay, so we can see all the details. We can edit these things. And typically within a business database, business application, you'll have some way to delete a record if it's no longer needed. You want to remove it completely from the database. So that would be one use case. And a little related use case would be to have a pop up say, hey, are you sure you want to delete this record? And that's typically why I like to have the delete feature while you're in the editing screen. So the user can see the record that they're about to delete. Okay. Now let's go back. Another use case for deleting records is you might want to have a little icon here within each of these rows within the gallery and say, oh, this is the record that I want to delete. Now, you may or may not want to include that in an application. I'm going to show you how to do that anyway, just in case if you want to. Then there's another use case. Let's say you want to have a button here at the top that says delete all, or perhaps you might want to have a button here that might make sense in a to-do application or task list application, which is to delete all the tasks that have been marked as complete. Okay, maybe you mark a task as complete as you complete the task in that day. And then at the end of the day, you might want to just click on a button and remove them all. Okay, so we can use the remove if function, give it a criteria, and it will delete all the records that meet that criteria. So that's what we're going to go over tonight. Going over those four use case statements, you're going to become very familiar with using the remove if. You would think the function would be called delete, but it's called remove and remove if. Okay, so those are that's all that we're going to cover tonight. And so let's get started. If you guys have any questions and or comments about what I'm presenting here tonight, please, by all means, post in the comments below, and I'll be monitoring that as we go along. Okay, so let's take care of the first use case. So okay, we go in and edit a record here. Now I'm going to go back into design mode, and I'm going to add a new button. Okay, add a button here, and I'll put it down here. Now, what I like to do with my buttons that could delete a record is I'll give them a background color of like a maroon or a red to sort of get their attention to say, hey, are you sure? This is a serious thing. So red is a color to sort of get people's attention. So we'll say delete record. Okay, that's what we'll call it. Now in the on select, make sure you've got this little drop down here in the upper left corner of your screen once you have that button selected, and we'll make sure that we're on the on select property. Okay, and here I'm going to show you the remove syntax or the parameters that you need to pass into it. Okay, so we'll simply type remove. Okay, now the first parameter of remove and also remove if, it's going to expect the data source name. Okay, so if you look over here on the left side of the screen within Visual Studio, I'm sorry, I worked with Visual Studio for quite a number of years. Power App Studio, I had the data selected. Okay, so we have four different data sources. within our SharePoint site, okay, and what we're going to delete are tasks. Okay, so I'm simply going to type that here, tasks. Okay. The second parameter for remove is what is the item it's looking for a record. You need to pass in a reference to a record itself. Okay. How do we get at a record? Well, we do know that we're pulling up um, the records here within these controls. Okay. So what we could try, I'm gonna do one thing here. Okay, so we have the global variable that is actually holding that record. So I want to copy that name of that global variable that is a reference to the record that we're currently on. And I'm going to use that as the second parameter here. Okay. And I'm going to see if it likes that. Normally, I use lookups to go fetch that from the data source, get a fresh copy of that record. And what it's going to tell us here, remove has invalid arguments. Okay, so can I use a non-record value? It actually is the record. So we are still going to use this in our lookup. Okay, so use the lookup function here. Now, just in case any of you are unfamiliar with the lookup function, I'm going to break this down very simply. Okay. So the lookup, if you want to get at a record, it's only going to return one record. Okay. The filter function will give you perhaps one or more records. Okay. But the lookup only gives you one. Okay. The lookup function can either return the record or it can return a single value from that record. If you're looking for just a single little value, let's say the title. You see how we have the task name there? We put in the title field for that SharePoint list. If we just wanted to get at that value, we would specify a third parameter to the lookup. We're not doing that here. So we're not going to go too far into that. We're just going to provide two parameters, which will give us a record. Okay. So the very first parameter that lookup will expect to see is the data source. So we'll type tasks. Okay. And the second parameter is going to be a criteria, the criteria in which we want to find the record that we want to pull up to fetch. Okay. And typically you want to find a unique column within that data source. Okay. Now we're using SharePoint here. SharePoint automatically creates an ID field for us. So that's what we're going to go look for because we know it's unique. Okay. If it wasn't unique, it would go, it would just give us the first one out of the series that matched that criteria. Okay. So we want to be very explicit. Okay. So that global variable is holding a record. Okay. So if we say dot ID, it should give us this. Okay. Now, I'm going to open up the coding window a little more and show you this code. And let's try to break this down a little bit so it's a little easier to read. Okay. Now I notice by doing this, I was missing an ending parenthesis. Okay. And then also for tasks, let's break that down. So the first parameter is the data source. Second parameter is the criteria. Okay. And we do have an error. What is going on here? So this is, okay, if I double click on that variable here, it's giving me an error. So you guys are going to see me sort of troubleshoot and debug right here live. And I've been told you guys actually like to see that someone like me who's, let's say, a seasoned developer, not everything works right the first time. And if this was an edited video that I would spend maybe a whole weekend on, you wouldn't even see that. So you're getting a little bit of a benefit to this. Okay. Okay. So it's checking to see. Okay. So this variable was meant to be a Boolean variable, not to hold our record. Okay. Um, the currently selected record is over on the previous screen. Okay, has a gallery called gal task list dot selected. Now we could have just used that. Okay, so I'm going to show you two ways of doing this. I should have noticed that global variable just by what I named it, new record. It's telling us yes, no, if it's a new record or not. Okay. So we're not looking for that. Um, okay, so I'm going to paste that in there. Whatever is the selected record out of that gallery from the previous screen, we're going to look at the ID from it. Okay. Now, we're not getting any errors at this point. However, my question is, could we have selected this, which should have returned the record in the first place? Okay. And I'm going to comment out the second way of doing it. Why should we have to go fetch it, a fresh copy of it, when the gallery on the previous screen already had a good reference to it? Okay, so that should work. So I'm showing you two different ways of doing that. Not sure if you guys were looking for that, but you got some extra value there. Okay, and I'm going to just put this on one line. Okay, and value. Um, Chances are you might want a copy of this project file. Say, would you like a copy of this app? Well, I have a link down in the video description below. If you click on it, you can access my free resources page. So click on that link to access this file, this MS app file. All right, very good. So this should remove it. Now, I don't know that I want to delete this one. I'm going to cancel, go back, and I'm going to add in some junk records, some test records. Okay. And Nico, I'll take a look at the comments here. Nico, if I had been watching the comments a little more closely, you would have saved me there. But you learned two ways of getting at it, right? You learned if you weren't familiar with the lookup, if anyone out there is watching the replay, you got a little bit of extra value. Isn't it easier just to type in gallery.selected or make a simple variable this item or navigate? Yeah, absolutely. Very good. Okay, so I'm going to add a new record. Okay, so now that I clicked add a new record, there is no existing record. This is a new record. My question to you guys, should this red delete record button even be there? Okay, because there's probably with a gallery, there's always a record that's selected there, whether it's obvious or not. And what I would say is we should make this button disappear if this is a new record. Okay, because we don't want to be accidentally deleting something that we didn't mean to. Okay, so what I'm going to say here is GBL new record. Okay, but what we need, so that is a Boolean value, yes, no, true, false. And in order to reverse that, we're going to either use the not keyword or the bang operator, one or the other, not both. Okay, because this is a new record, it's not going to show up there. So let's add in. I'm going to say test one, save. Okay, and look, it brought us back to this. Maybe we wanted to add a new one. Okay, test two. Okay, and let's do test three. All right, so at this point, I want to go back to the home screen. We're going to click cancel. And okay, so there's a bug. What we wanted to do was simply go back to the home screen, not just do a back. Okay, so that first screen is the task list screen. So I'm going to say navigate. Okay. I personally like the fade position. So we hit cancel. And did we do that right? Yeah, this is the screen that we want to go to. If we hit cancel, it should go to task. List screen, not task edit screen. All right, so we'll click cancel. It's going to go back here. Very good. All right. Yeah, so monitoring the comments here, I was going to ask if there was a way to display a gallery with nothing selected. Well, you could make it look as if nothing was selected. Okay, so if we were to bring this fresh up new, now what we have is we've colored. If I clicked on this gallery and scroll all the way down as the top one, this template fill, We said if it's selected, this item dot selected, we're going to say light yellow, otherwise white. Um, w- if you just had it always the same color, it may not seem like anything's selected. So um, there is another property um, called. Let me go find. I never use it because I want to be able to select things within a gallery. If you're ever working in a project and your gallery's acting weird, like you clicking on one of the records and it just doesn't seem to be working, there's a property in here that might foul you up. And I'm going to show that to you guys now. Um, if I can find it quickly. I thought it was like allow selection or something like that. Um, Selectable. Okay, by default, that's true. If I've had one or two times. I think I had that one time in one of my projects. Somehow I got set to false, and I was helping somebody else. They had that problem as well. Um, so anyway, um, in that case, let's just actually set this to false. Okay. So you would think that nothing is select. So if we run this and try to click on anything, you notice we can't. But because we have the code that's showing the currently selected one, we know that there really is one selected. Okay, so that's what I do. How if the requirements for the application is like, oh, we don't want anything selected, well, I just make it appear like nothing is selected, and then what I do is once somebody clicks in, I set I actually set that record up with a value so that it actually displays it. So just to let you know what I would do in that situation. So I'm going to go back and reverse that. Okay. So we add a new record. The button's not there. That's good. We hit cancel. We go back. I want to scroll down to our test records, which are at the bottom. Now, it might actually make sense to have all of our new tasks at the top. Do you think? Well, we could sort this any way that we'd like, but I'd sort of like to work with the new records in this case. For the data source, I'm going to click on data source. What happens when I click on that data source? It's not going to bring up a property called data source. It's just going to bring up the property items, which is the same thing. It's sort of weird that Microsoft has two different words here within the Power App Studio. What I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap a function around this called sort. Okay, and I'm going to sort this on the title. So that might be something you might want to do. But in this case, I want to say created. Okay, so that's a date time field that is automatically created by SharePoint, and it doesn't. You think, okay, well, the very first record that was created is at the top. Well, you add in a third parameter, which is an optional parameter. By default, it is an ascending order. You want it to be reversed, you say descending. Okay, so I have the very latest ones showing here at the top. All right, so if I run this, this is what we see. Now let's test out this remove code that we added in here. Okay, so if I hit delete, well, first of all, after we delete it, what do we want to have happen? We probably want to go to the other screen, right? I'm going to copy that. Make sure that we are on select here. Okay, so after we remove it, we're going to navigate back to the home screen. Okay, I'm going to hit format text, try to make it look prettier. Okay, all right, so we're in test 3. I'm going to hit delete. It deletes it. It goes back here. And you notice that it isn't here anymore. Okay. I love it. Nico, this is a great transition, man. You're really helping me out here. We want to pop up. Yay. All right. That's exactly the next thing I want to do here because um, when I develop a little application or a big application for, the users, the stakeholders, whatever, the delete's the last thing I put in, really. Um, I sort of like to filter out the things that they don't want to see because users are notorious for accidentally clicking on the delete on the wrong record. Oh, it's gone. Can you bring it back? It's like um you could implement a logical delete, which is you could have a field called um, is active. Okay, make the default to be true. If you click on the delete button, you would set that to false. And then for a gallery like this, you could just filter it based on that. So if they come to you like, somebody deleted something, can you? I just go into the data and switch that field. Okay. All right. Very good. Um, so let's work on that pop up. So we'll go in here. All right. So what I like to do, I'm going to add in. What do I want to do? A lot of times in the past, I've used rectangles. They look really good. I think in this case, I'd like to use a container. A container has a lot more features that we can use. It will actually contain other controls. I like that rather than trying to create groups. Containers are better than groups. Okay. Now, what I'm going to do to this container is going to take up the whole screen because I want it to sort of, pop up. Typically, there's a word in software development or, when you're talking about user interfaces, it's called modal. So if you have a modal pop up, it will not allow you to click on things behind it. It's going to make you deal with the question at hand that you're posing to the user. Okay. So what we will do here is we'll make it a modal. We'll take up the whole screen, and let's change the background color of this pop up to white. This is what I like to do. It doesn't have to be white. You can set it to whatever color you have. I still like to allow users to see the data behind it that they're about to delete. Okay, so I might do something like 85% of the white so they can sort of see through it a little bit. And you can play around with that to get at the percentage that you like. Okay. And I see Nicole Neese. Um, Hello, everyone. And Nico says hi. Very good. All right. So we have this pop up that will come up here. And we only want this pop up to show up if we have a variable set. That's how you make a pop up visible. Okay. So I'm going to create a variable here. It's going to be a local variable. And I think this is the first time in this series where I've talked about local variables. I think up to this point, I've just implemented globals, which isn't necessarily a good thing because sometimes your variables get mixed up between your screens. As your application grows, you start to have more and more screens. So if you only need to have that variable, use it on that screen. I would recommend opting to use a local variable by using a function called data context. Okay. And it is case sensitive, but I was hoping it would help me out. Um, but we don't want to set it here. We'll set it on that delete record. The variable that we want to have is LOC. LOC is short for local variable. And we'll call this show delete prompt or pop up like that. Okay. Now it's going to complain and give us a red squiggly, oh, what's going on with the code? You just go in there and just hover over it. Okay. Name isn't valid. Okay. It's not recognized. Well, with this delete record, I can go in here. Instead of all that, what we could do is use that update context I was trying to use a moment ago. The update context, it's a weird thing because all your local variables, it's a part of a single record for that screen. Okay. And you can update multiple local variables all in one update context statement. Okay, because when you see these little curly braces, which you have to use with update context, those curly braces typically are indicating, hey, this is a record. It may not be a record in a database, but it's a record in memory for that screen. Okay, so what's the name of our variable that we just picked? I'm going to paste because it was loc show delete pop up. I'm going to set that to true. Okay. At the end of that line of code, you always need to separate your lines of codes with semicolons. Okay. Now, all this other code, that, okay, And what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down Alt. I'm going to click on that button that will enable that variable, set that variable to true. I'm going to add some controls here. Actually, two buttons. Okay. Button one and a button two. Okay. One for, yeah, go ahead and delete, or, hey, cancel. I didn't mean to delete it. That type of thing. Okay. So the one on the right side, inside the code, I'm going to paste that code I just cut. It's going to do the delete for us, and it's going to navigate back. Okay. Um, and there's one more step we need to do when the screen is hidden, and that is to clean up that. You want to use a screen's on hidden event or the on hidden property. Put some code in there that if there's any cleanup that you need to do for that screen, that's pretty much where you should put it. Okay. And I see Data is King says, "Hey, it's so great to see you guys all joining me here tonight." Um, okay, so before we forget, what I'm going to do is, well, let's go ahead and say yes, yes, eat. I'm going to give that a maroon or red color, and this one I'll say cancel, cancel, and say no, don't. um, yeah. Okay, so for the cancel, I'm gonna use that update context again. And I do, and these pop-ups like this, they don't work well with if you use responsive containers. Okay, so I just saw a comment here by Nico. Nico, I was pausing and reading this. When you're making apps for your clients, are you always doing it in the responsive way? No. Uh, I really haven't done a lot of responsive apps within PowerApps. I've done them in ASP.NET and other web technologies. Um, I found that I when I gather requirements, so somebody tells me that it's going to be used on a mobile device, um, and that's probably only 5% of the time. Um, I'll tell them like, hey, if you allow me to do it landscape like this, it could be used really well on a tablet within a browser, that type of thing. Most smartphones are you just turn them sideways and you could use them, and a lot of the apps have been used successfully that way. If you like to go the responsive way, you're going to go about this a different way. um, I'm trying to think. Perhaps a good way of handling that would be have a different screen, or have perhaps a responsive container that appears or disappears. I didn't really want to go too much into that tonight. We could probably make that a different session, but no, I don't have an overwhelming uh, request in the requirements for the apps I write to be responsive. But if that came up, I would make it responsive. Absolutely. Okay, so going back here, we're going to update the context. We're going to say LOC, and we're going to say show pop up, and we're going to set that to false. Okay, and I'm going to copy all that code. I do see these buttons are still on the screen. We need to fix that. But while I have this code on my clipboard, I'm going to click on the screen and go find the on hidden event before I forget about it. Okay. So here we have, now we could have two separate update context statements, but remember what I said? What we could do is we could update all of our local variables at the same time. So you could actually separate this with a comma and have better looking or more efficient code, perhaps all in one statement or one line of code. Okay. So that's what I did there. Um, Okay, so I set that to false. Very good. Now, what I wanted these buttons to do is to appear and disappear. Um, and they would have done that if they were inside our container. Okay, so I'm going to cut them, hold down Alt, I'm going to click on that delete record, which will bring this up. Okay, now that the container is up, I'm going to paste inside that container. Okay, do you see? I'm looking at my screen. If you look above me here, it put those two buttons inside there. Okay, and now we can move them around. Okay. Now we might want to put, let's say, a label inside that. Now I'm going to make sure the container is selected again. Okay, I'm going to insert a text label here, and I'll make it big and very noticeable. Okay, say, are you sure you want to delete? Perhaps we should even use a word like permanent. Permanently delete. Have you guys ever had this happen? You notice I was typing inside there and it just reset. That's very frustrating. So I'm gonna go up to the coding window and type it there. Okay. You sure you want to permanently delete this task? I'll put on a colon and give it the name of the task. Okay. So I'm gonna use an ampersand to splice two strings together. Okay. We have, well, it's the gallery from that first screen, which is gal task list. Okay, dot selected. And what we're going to do is we're going to get at its title. Okay. But we need a dot in between there. Okay. There we go. Okay. Now we need to make this larger. And we probably want to make this bigger. Let's say 48. That's probably maybe a little too big, maybe 32. Something else I would probably do here is make this centered. Okay. Make this centered. Now, sometimes whenever you're inside this environment and you're trying to center something, sometimes Power Apps will try to see it's give me those lines as I'm centering it with the buttons. Okay. If it doesn't give me that, and if you're really sort of maybe OCD or anal about um, getting to the exact middle, I'll show you how to do that right now. Okay. No extra charge, guys. I'm going to go down to, well, it's going to come down to Y. Okay, the Y. And what I'm going to say is parent, okay, which is the container. What is its width? Okay, we'll take the width of that. Then we will subtract self that width. Okay, now I'm going to put some parentheses around that. Okay, so I want to take one, subtract, and then I'm going to divide that by two, and it should perfectly center it for us. Now, I'm finding it a little difficult to actually read this text. So if we click on this container, we'll go back into color. Let's look at our alpha here. And maybe we want that to be more like 90, 95. They can still sort of see it. Now we do have the name of the subject of the task there, so they don't necessarily have to. It just depends on, find it hard to read. Maybe 90 is just right. Okay, so just keeping an eye on the comments here. Um, yeah, so talking about responsive, I don't normally do the responsive thing. Yes, exactly. I thought about that. All you need to do is turn your phone and you have the same result without additional work. But I was curious, how does it look in the business world? Yeah, I should probably do a whole series on how to do a complete app that is 100% responsive. Um, because there is some need out there. I haven't seen a lot of the need myself, but um, you guys might want to know how to do that. Okay, so that's perfectly centered there, and I think these buttons are centered enough. I don't want to mess with math to try to center those. Um, okay, so I'm liking how this is turning out. If I click on this delete button, okay, it's got my remove, it's got the navigate back and the cancel just takes away the pop-up. Okay, so let's test all this. So the first thing I want to do is hit cancel. Okay, and then if I hit delete, it comes back up. If I hit cancel, it goes away. If I cancel, I see the test two there again. I'm going to click on the edit. It's going to come back up. So you guys should always do this. If you add a line or a few lines of code before you go on to the next feature, the next thing you're going to add, always sort of test it all kinds of different ways. It just doesn't make you look good as a developer if you don't do some due diligence in testing your app, and you'll catch a lot of weird things that you don't want to have, you don't want to require the user to catch for you, or your manager, or even the testers. I tell you what, if you work at a large organization, they'll have a whole department of testers, and they love to find bugs. And what they do is they call them defects. Oh, we found one of your defects. It doesn't feel too good. And typically there's a little bit of some weird emotions between developers and testers. They provide, in my opinion, an essential um, function in the project. So I would recommend that you guys value those people, um, and you might have a better relationship with them, um, if you do some thorough testing of your own. I recommend doing that throughout the app. Okay, so now I'm going to hit delete. Okay, and I'm going to say yes. Go ahead and delete. Okay, and the test two is gone. How about that? Okay, okay. So what we've done is we've added a delete button on the edit screen, and then we've moved it to a pop-up. Okay, you don't have to provide that pop-up, but most stakeholders in the project will want you to implement that. I will put that in. It's a little extra work, okay, but um, people will expect it, and it looks it makes you looks it makes you look more professional. Okay. Okay, so data is king. Is there a way to move the pop-up in another location on the screen when the pop-up is open? Absolutely. Okay, so data is king. Let me see if I understand your question right, because I'm gonna click on this, and what I'm gonna do is yeah, so you could do something like this. All right, now we might want to is this what you mean, sort of move it around, change the shape and move it on the screen? Is that what you want? Because you could do that. Let's I always want to cover up things that perhaps they could change in the background. I don't want them to change that. I don't want them to like click on a menu and go to a different screen. I want them to click on that cancel first. So that's why I'd like take up the whole screen. But yeah, you can change all this stuff. And in that case, for the property called Y, we might want to set that up here. We might want to say parent, okay, subtract self dot height, some parentheses around there, and then we'll divide that by 2. Okay. So if we move this around, well, hold on, let me get a hold of the container here. And what you have to do is you got to move these, move your cursor until you see the little four-way thing here, and then you can move around. Now, where's our buttons at? Well, let's look at this. Okay, there we go. We could set up these buttons. Oh, look at that. It centered it to that label. I like that. I like it a lot. Okay. Now, what I sort of want to do with the Y for these two buttons, because if we were to change this around a little bit here in the future, I'd sort of like it to now our label up here, we should, if you're going to refer to a control in code, you really should give it a meaningful name. Label, are you sure? Okay. So I'm going to reference that label. Two buttons here, button 5 and button 6. We should probably rename those as well. Okay. But on the Y, we could say wherever the label's at, you could say it's Y, and we'll add the label dot height. Okay. And we might want to add a little bit of a gutter or a spacer between the label and the buttons. So we might want to say something like 50. Does that look good? Okay, maybe 20. 20. So how I understood your question, data is king. Like maybe you only wanted it to do this. So because we put some dynamic positioning in there, it's doing that. Now we didn't we didn't mess with the Y for these buttons here. Okay. So that's not really the point of this the video tonight. So I won't I won't go too far into that. I want to get too distracted here. Okay. Data is king. I want I want the user to be able to move the pop-up if the pop-up is the way of some important info. Okay. Now what you're working with there, dragging things around is tricky within Power Apps. Um, there is a new feature coming out in Power Apps. I was looking up some Wave 1 release for this year, Wave 1 release for Power Apps, and they are extending those containers for responsive design where you can sort of drag things from one container to another. That's sort of cool. But as far as in like, you know how you have a normal window and you can drag it around within Windows, which is sort of natively supported within Windows. It's either not really supported, wasn't designed for that, or um, you have to do some crazy workarounds to do that. I've seen people use slider controls to sort of simulate a drag, and then on the change event of that, you can actually move something. But I think in that case, you don't want to make your application too complicated. Try to just work on the core features first, get those working well. Something like that. What I would tell the users is, hey, if you need to see something here, just click cancel, look at it, and then if you're sure, then click on delete, and then you know that you're sure. That's how I would handle it. Okay. So very good. I appreciate these comments and questions, guys. Okay, so we've got that. All right, so we did the first two. Okay, so let's go back to the main screen here, and I'm gonna run it because that little black thing that was weird. I just want to make sure that wasn't a bug. Okay, so we already have an icon for editing. Okay. What we could do is we could sort of use that button in there. Okay. Now that's actually a group. That's actually an icon and a little circle behind it. It sort of makes it a little more professional looking rather than just an icon by itself. And to be honest, I use a website called loading.io to find some cool looking um, SVGs to use instead of Power Apps icons. But if you're just trying to get something done, you're trying to finish your app in a day, you know, using these icons is just fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, well, they're selected right now. Okay. I'm going to hit Control C, Control V. Okay. And then I'm going to make sure all of them are selected there. Look for the four-way thing here. And I might want to sort of size these down. They really don't need to be that big. Okay. So what I'll do here, I'm going to look at the icon. It's 50 width, 50 height, and the circle is 80 and 80. So let's what you can do is you can select the whole group, and you notice over here on the tree view, um, the group is selected. So I'm just gonna like move this down a little bit, okay? And then I'll click on that new group. All three are selected. I'm gonna size that down a little more. I'm gonna here. Move this up and try to move them all together to the same exact. And I think I'm not doing a good job here. Hold down shift, which I'm hoping it keeps the aspect ratio, which is square. And it is. Okay, very good. Right. Move that down. Maybe use the arrow keys. Okay. I don't think that's perfectly centered in there. That's going to bother me. Okay, so we can have two icons like that. I still think they're a little too big. All right, so for the circle, we got 65, 65. Let's go with for that circle, 50 and 50. Okay, and then for the icon inside of it, let's make it 35 and 35. Drag it in there. And if you can't get things just right, you can zoom all the way in and you can work with it easier that way. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete that. The other set, because I had the first set just how I like it, and I'm going to hit copy paste. Okay. I'm going to zoom out, or you can just hit Control 0 on your keyboard. And it's going to zoom out for you. Now we can look for the little four-way pointer here. Move that over. Okay, that's looking good. Sort of. Okay, so I have those all selected, and I'm going to move that down a little bit. You don't want to ever, within a gallery, you never want to put anything too close to the right side, because you always know when you get a few records in there, it's going to put in a scroll bar. Okay, so don't put anything right next to it. All right, so I'm gonna start doing what I should do here, and for this group, I'm gonna rename the group. Okay, delete group, and then this one I'm gonna say I just want that this one right here. Rename. I'm gonna call this edit. Now for the circle, the back color, I want that to be that nice maroon color we had before. And then for the icon, probably want the trash can, right? So I'm going to type in trash, and there it is. All right. I think we're getting there, guys. Now, we probably want to have something happen very similarly, okay, than what we had over there for the edit. So I'm going to go over to the edit, and I always like to sort of reuse things and not have to duplicate my efforts there. Okay, so we have a container, and I'm going to copy that, and it should work really well on this other screen. Okay, so I'm going to paste that here. Okay, now on this one, whenever they click on this group of icons here, we want to go to the on select for the group. So they either click on the circle, maybe there's a few pixels between the icon and the circle. You want to grab both those. And instead of navigating away, what we want to do is we want to update the context. Okay, we use our curly braces. Inside here, our local variables LOC, totally pop up. Okay, yeah, true. Okay, there we go. Hey, we've got that to pop up. Okay, and it is showing the correct record data here. Okay, if I click cancel, going to take it away. If I click on it again, now what I should do is look at this delete. We definitely still want to delete it, okay, but we don't want to navigate away. But what we do want is we want this to be set up to false. Okay. Once it deletes it, no, we don't want to navigate. We just want to delete and then hide that. Okay. So I'm going to run this. We're already in here. Well, I'm going to click cancel first. I'm going to test out how a user would do it here. Test one, click that. That works. There you go. What do you guys think? Okay. All right. So We've covered 3 of our use cases that I promised we would cover. Let's have something that would delete all of our tasks that have been marked as complete, okay? But before we do so, what you could do, let's say we had a lot of records here and we wanted to review all the ones that were marked as complete, okay? So what we could do is we could add over a drop down. So I'm going to type in drop down here. Drop down, okay? Put it up there. And I'm going to have some hard coded values or some literal values that I type in here. Show all tasks. We could say show completed tasks. Okay. Now let's get this drop down to control a name, DRP, um, filter tasks. Okay. And keeping an eye on the comments here. Nico says this looks amazing. Thanks. Well, if I was going to deliver this to a client, there's a lot more stuff that I would need to do, and I plan on taking this. This is probably going to be a series where we actually finish it off really nice, and it's going to look really professional. It's going to have a real working menu, application header. Might even pull in my application template. So stay tuned to the rest of the videos that we add on to this. Okay, so we do have a good named drop down list. Okay, and for the gallery here, what we can do, okay, let's break this up. We're going to hit format text. It's going to make it a little more readable. Okay, so now we're going to use our filter. Okay, let's use the filter. Okay, I think what I'd like to do, we either have show all. Okay, an if statement here. If that drop down list dot selected text value, gotta remember to hit dot value on that, right? Um, something, and we need to go copy that text. Um, we need to end off the if parenthesis there. Okay, so let's go grab this text here. Okay, so I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go back to the gallery. Okay, and over here I'm going to put a little comment with 2 forward slashes. Okay, so if it says show all tasks, which almost cut that and say, hey, just show me all the tasks. If this is a real application, there would be some other filtering because your tasks, you could have hundreds or thousands in there. You probably are only interested in the tasks that were created in the last quarter, maybe the month or the week or the day. You know what I mean? So you could probably slim those down a lot. Very good. Now, if it doesn't say show all tasks, then we know that we can just filter tasks based on criteria. And that criteria is, gee whiz, what was the name of the column? I'm going to go over to my ERD diagram. Okay, task completed. That's what it's called. Okay. Could say completed equals true. You could do that. Completed is a Boolean value, true, false, yes, no. And the criteria, that second parameter of the filter is expecting a true, false, yes, no. Does it make sense to just say completed? It does. It's a little more succinct. But you could do it either way, really. Okay, so it's going to filter based on the ones that are completed. Okay, and if I hit format text, and again, it's probably going to break that down even more, make it a little more readable here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out, and I'm going to create some comments here just to make it a little more readable, more pretty. Okay, maybe make that little line a little longer. Say possible values for the drop down. Okay, good. All right, so let's test this and see if it's working as intended. So here we're showing all the tasks. Okay, something else we could do, guys. This sort of is something that makes for a good application, makes it more usable, more user friendly. Perhaps the user wants to know how many records they're looking at. Okay, so there are a few things we could do for this. We could say, well, count rows. Okay, we could reference the gal if we're just working with you know under 100 records here. We could just reference the gallery. Okay, gal task list. Dot all. You got to remember to say dot all items. Okay, so showing us a record count of 7. Little here showing at ampersand records. And maybe make that label a little wider. Okay, like that. Now, a gallery will typically just show you 100 records out of the data source that it has. Now, there's more in memory there. And if you use that scroll, let's say there's hundreds in there, and you move that scroll bar down when it hits that 101st record, it's like, oh, let me load up the other 100. Okay. So that isn't always the most reliable way of getting the record count. Okay. Whenever you get the query the way that you like it, okay, you don't need it sorted, but we could do is just sort of copy that. I really don't like duplicate code, but what you could do here, instead of doing that, referencing the all, because if you ever change the data source in the gallery, you need to always remember to come up here and change it here as well. I'm going to hit format text to make this more readable for you guys. Okay. So now, okay, it's showing 7 records. It's the same. Now show completed tasks. There's only 2. Okay. Yeah. So, okay. Um, let's see here. Hey, if you're getting anything helpful out of this, a comment or even a like really helps the channel, and lets people like you know this is good content. Much appreciated. Okay, so I'm going to show you some code next that will delete all the completed ones, and I'm just keeping an eye on the comments. Some people are interested in a post that I made recently talking about a success planning session, and it was really interesting. Could you say a bit more about this? And yes, I'll just say a quick blurb about it. It won't be very long here. Okay. So if you go to the community tab here on the YouTube channel, you'll see that post. And what that is, I'm looking to work with 12 students very closely for the next 6 months and pretty much help them work on their career. And what I always tell people, if you let's say you don't have a Power Apps job and you're looking to get a Power Apps job, or let's say you're looking for promotion, or you're looking to become a freelancer, you of course need to master all the ins and outs of Power Apps, learn the language, but you need to build a portfolio. And there's a lot of things that I can show um, my students that pretty much to get them to you're out there in the industry almost as a seasoned developer. Okay. And so I'm looking for 12 students. If you want to book a call with me and my wife, Nicole, we would love to talk to you. There's actually a video. I haven't made it public yet because um, we don't have a lot of time to have these intake calls. We want to have a discussion with each of you that are interested to see if it's a good fit. Okay, to see what it is that you're looking to do with your career, and to see if we're a good fit. To see if I could help you with what you're working with, and see where you're trying to go. And so we're only looking for 12 students at this time. I'm bringing someone on full time at the end of April. So that whole thing is starting April 1st. Okay. And so I've got some good help coming. I'm excited. And so anyway, so once we get some more time on our schedule to take even more calls, take on more students, which might be in a weeks down the road, I'll probably do some more promotion about that. So if you see that, that's what that's about. Okay. Nico ask, is it just for beginners? It's actually any level, okay, who doesn't know how to start Power Ups or need to have a guide, or can I book a session just that one for my specific problem? Okay, so the session for booking a call isn't a one-on-one tutoring session. It's about to see if we're a good fit to then work closely together. It's not a one-on-one. If you're just looking for, let's say, 1 hour of my time, I do charge quite a bit for that because I get so much demand for that. I have so little time. So it's just a supply and demand type of thing. I do have a Fiverr gig out there, and a lot of times I just don't have time, and I turn a lot of work away, and I'm very picky on uh, you know on the clients I pick up in Fiverr because I have so much demand. So it's not for one-on-one tutoring, but you would get a lot of personalized attention. It will be a group tutoring type of environment, but I'm going to tell you guys more about that later. Okay. So stay tuned. If you're interested in finding out what that's about, if you would like, if you like the idea of perhaps working with me and my staff closely for the next 6 months to get you to your goals, your profession goals within Power Apps, I would say go ahead and book the call. Okay. Yeah, very good. All right. So we need to put something in here that will remove all of our um, tasks that have been marked as complete. Okay. And we're going to write this in a way that will handle it, whether no matter how they are filtered. Okay. So let's do that now. Let's add a button. Okay, add the button here at the top, and we could have it say "Wheat." Um, how would we want to phrase this? Completed task. Make that maroon, and let's make that whiter. See more like 300, perhaps. That looks good. Okay. And later on, we might move things around and try to make it look a little nicer here, okay? Because we're run out of space. We need some space for a menu later on and things. But I'm just going to show you how to get this done, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to grab the name of this gallery, which is gal task list. I'm going to copy that. And on the on select, what we're going to do is we're going to loop, okay? Let's do a for all. Okay, for all. And for only two parameters. The first parameter is going to be some type of an array or a collection. It's something with multiple values in it. Okay. So that gallery there has multiple values in it. Okay. We could say all items to actually get at the data, the underlying data in that gallery. Okay. That's giving us red squigglies because we need something in the second parameter here. Okay. Um, but and down here, what we could do is use that remove. Okay, we're going to remove tasks. Okay, and the second parameter would be uh, a record. Okay, but we don't want to delete everything. So what I'm going to do up here is I'm going to filter it. Okay, let's filter that. Okay, that based on completed equals true. And if it is complete, it's going to return true. So we don't have to do another calculation there with the equals operator, right? Okay, so it's going to give us all the completed. And that's going to give us all the completed no matter how we're filtering it. Okay. So we're going to remove those. Okay. Now, what I like to do in a for all is I like to create a little alias here, and you create a little alias, and an alias is just like a moniker, almost like a variable name. Okay, as my, so I can reference. So this is going to be a loop. So let's say we've got 5 items in there that we're going to delete. Each item is represented with that little my, and you can name it whatever you want. You can call it my record if you want. I like just the word my, my, because it's nice and short. Okay. So down here, you just say my, move, move that. Okay. So now, because we're deleting multiple records, we probably want another pop-up, right? All right, so let's try to do this quickly because you guys already know how to do this, right? So we've got this container one. We should probably name this container something good here, like CNT, which would be a good prefix for containers. Okay, container um, delete task. Okay, then I'm going to duplicate all that. Do I see a delete? I don't see a delete. Okay, so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure it's selected. I'm gonna hit Control T, Control E. We'll have a new one. Now, what does it do? It's gonna put that container inside the other one. Okay, so I'm gonna click on that. I'm gonna hit X. When you do the paste, make sure you have the screen selected. I'm gonna paste that. Okay. Now for this one, I'm gonna rename the container. Okay, delete completed tasks. Okay. Now for the visible, we don't want to use this show delete pop-up. We want to have a different pop-up here, show delete pop-up for completed. Okay, now that hasn't been defined yet, which is fine, but this button would set that up. Okay, so we'll do an update, a context. That's a true. Okay, all right. And then we're going to need this for all in a moment. Well, I want to comment it out because I don't want to accidentally do it. Okay. And I almost don't want to delete a bunch of data in here that were actually sort of good examples of tasks. Okay, so if I go in here and I'm going to mark this as, well, actually, how we have that, we just uncheck this checkbox. Okay, we should probably have that on the editing screen there. So we should probably put a checkbox that allows them to undo that, like that little checkbox does. Okay, so let's add in two. Test one done. Save. And we'll say test 2 done. I'll click cancel to go back to that home screen, and I'll make both of these done. Okay. All right. Now for this delete button, it just makes that pop up, the new pop up, pop up. Okay. I am going to click on this. Are you sure you want to permanently delete all completed tasks? And you might actually tell them like, hey, you're about to delete a lot of them here. Okay. So let's right here, let's see, completed, all completed tasks, question mark. And we want to say something like there are currently a number of completed tasks. Okay. So we might want to say count those, count all items. You need to do a filter, of course. Filter that. based on the completed. Okay, we need another parenthesis at the end. There are currently 9. Okay, so we'll do an ampersand, and we'll also say there are currently 9 that will be deleted. Exclamation point. Now, we might want to make another thing to sort of get their attention, and that would be to change the font color of this maybe to red. Okay, and make it bold. Okay, now for that delete. Okay, so this will be completely changed here. Okay, when we update this, we need to say show delete pop-up for completed. So that's the new one for the new container. Set that to false. Over here to the cancel, make sure that one is updated as well. Okay, and then for here, let's take out that remove. That's the remove from the previous one. Okay, and I'm going to hold down Alt, hit cancel. I'm going to get that code underneath here that I commented out. Okay. So I'm going to cut and remove that. Okay. That button there. And for the delete, we'll go in here and put that for all there. Now, it's given us a little red squiggly here. Make sure you separate your lines of code with semicolons. Okay, trying to make that a little more prettier there. Okay, so I'm going to run this. There are currently 9 that will be deleted. Do we really have 9? Okay, no, there's only 2. So we have a bug. I'm going to click on this. Okay, there's 2. Okay, let me go to show all tasks. So that should be the same whether. Now it says 9. Okay, so there's something that I did wrong in my filter, it looks like. I'm going to format the text there. Let's go look at our data for tasks really quick. And it's completed. See how something so small could sort of foul you up there? It's completed. Okay. And what is complete? Why is there a complete field in here? And I'm sort of wondering, if I open up show or hide columns, let's look for complete. Completed. Okay. So I'm sort of curious if there's some weird hidden SharePoint field in there. Either that or I'm having a little bit of a brain fart, guys. I'm getting old. I'm getting close to 50 years old, so my mind isn't as sharp as it once was. Okay. Okay. So we've got completed in there. Okay. So now if I hit cancel, no matter how we filter, it's always going to notice that there's only 2 there. Okay. And it should work regardless. Okay. So I'm going to click on this. I'm going to cross my fingers, hope that the code works just great when I click on delete. Okay. And now we have no completed tasks. Isn't that cool, guys? All right. All right. Very cool. Guys, for some reason, YouTube thinks you're going to like this video next. Let's see if they're right. Or you can select this playlist, which I've selected for you based on the content you're currently watching. Guys, gotta hurry. Click one of them. Otherwise, YouTube's going to autoplay some other video, which you probably don't want. Thanks.